In the year 2000, Radiohead's seminal album, Kid A, signaled a technological transformation in the band's sound. The guitars and raw vocals of Airbag and electioneering from OK Computer had succumbed to the electronic soundscape of Fitter Happier. The opening track, Everything in Its Right Place, is the very pointed divide between the rock band who rose to fame through the 1990s and the largely synthesized electronic group that Radiohead have been known as in the 21st century. There are two colors in my head, the second verse wails. The two colors, the two voices, representing the competing sounds and styles and sensibilities of singer Tom York's musical mind. Where do they go from here with this whole new sonic palette from which to create? It's like the conflict between analog and digital, human and AI, humanity and itself that our society has been grappling with, reduced to a purely musical level. Now, I'm sure many of you are like, oh, what the hell? I didn't click on this video asking for a complete breakdown of Radiohead's Everything in Its Right Place. But I promise you, if you have a general understanding of that song, it'll better help you to understand Gareth Edwards' latest project, The Creator, as it's featured in an early scene that fits its meaning perfectly. But don't worry, I'm gonna get to that in just a bit. But first, this video is sponsored by Aura. If you're tired of constantly receiving spam phone calls to the point where you don't even answer your phone anymore, like I do, Aura can help to alleviate that stress. Look, data brokers are determined to make a fortune selling your information to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn more about you. Aura can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Not many people realize that brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they're really good at making that process way harder than it should be. So let Aura handle it for you. Aura also does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats you can't see. It's so easy to set up, so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. You get everything at one affordable price. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. At the end of the day, you can either let people continue to exploit and profit off of your private information, or you can go to aura.com/filmspeak to start your 2-week free trial, which you can also find linked below in the description. Once again, thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video. Let me tell you why The Creator is the best science fiction film of the year. The insane thing about The Creator is that it's one of the most timely films that I think has ever come out, and it wasn't originally designed to be that way. We obviously live in a crazy time with artificial intelligence, between art plagiarism and concerns that AI could make decisions which compromise security networks or even cause a disaster. Like the atomic bomb in Oppenheimer, once you let the genie out of the bottle, you have to live with the repercussions. You've changed the world forever, for better or worse. The Creator is interested in exploring the ways in which a world after AI exists. In the film, everyone was all in on AI in its earlier, more domesticated forms, and the prospect of using it to make their lives easier, like slave labor without actually subjugating a life form, all seemed like a perfect world. Until AI made a catastrophic error, or at least humanity thought AI made a catastrophic error, and then immediately the public turned against it. It opened people's eyes to the idea that AI is not perfect. It's not this monolithic entity that humanity can control to no bounds. Sounds a bit familiar, right? We've created a living technology, a new species in a sense, that marks the next step in our evolution because of how our knowledge has progressed. It's a tangible thing that is capable of many things that humans are. To treat it as lesser than is to refuse to acknowledge its existence, and therefore refuse to acknowledge the fact that AI is capable of good and bad. The irony in the film, of course, is that AI didn't even set off the bomb in Los Angeles. The detonation was a result of a coding error, a human error, disguised as a fault of the tech itself. It just became easier to blame it on the other because it isn't human, or at least it isn't seen as human. Whether or not we should or should have created AI is beside the point at this time, because it exists, it's happened. How do we move forward? How do we shape a world in which AI and humans are able to coexist harmoniously? We have a choice, so beautifully encapsulated by the creator. We can either continue to stoke the fear-mongering flame or recognize that this is an inflection point in our species' history. Just like nuclear energy, we can ring the bell and cry doom about how it can mean death and destruction, or we can find and defend its virtues and move forward. I don't know about you, but the latter sounds a lot better to me. The creator engages with the idea of humans wanting to give life to things, whether it's a child or a form of technology, without stopping to consider whether they should actually proceed down that road. In the film, AI didn't ask to be created, it was just created. And when it started to gain sentience with feelings and emotions, intelligence, and spirituality that matched our own, we wrote it off because they don't look like us, and we scapegoated AI when something went wrong. It reveals our deepest insecurity. We become cynical, cruel, and numb. Our compassion goes out the window. These lives didn't ask to come into existence that way. They were shaped into that because of someone else's fears and insecurities. So many characters in this film refuse to budge on how the world has evolved and are hell-bent on turning back the clock. Part of it is to do with the fear of the unknown in living in a post-AI world that might lead to humanity's extinction. Part of it is because of trauma. For example, Allison Janney's character, Howl, has had to live with how her kids were killed at the hands of a simulant, morphing her entire worldview into one of prejudice. She views all AI the same as the one who killed her sons, and so much of the West share her sentiments. This gives way to an imperialist commentary where the US is called out for its interventionism, with Gareth Edwards evoking Vietnam War and Iraq War imagery. The Iraq War, and really just the war on terror in general, parallels are especially potent, what with Nomad, the West's orbital strike superweapon, being this godlike harbinger of death with its drone strikes. Even the Zero Dark 30-esque prologue at the top, and how the US views Nirmata as this Osama bin Laden type figure. The US trying to impose their view on the East because they're embracing of and accepting of AI, they're living harmoniously alongside them, is a threat to national interests. I love how the very idea is even dismantled in universe when Ken Watanabe's character says,
"Do you know what will happen to the West when we win this war? Nothing."
The idea that AI won't stop until it destroys humans is an entirely Western fabrication built upon a foundation of insecurity, of something that may or may not be greater than us, simply existing in the world. The arrival of the AI, the other, as it's really an allegory for in this film, actually causes certain factions that only want to uphold the status quo to regress. It causes our species to regress to something tribal and less sophisticated. The more AI becomes sentient, the less human humanity becomes. There's almost a self-destructive prophecy here, because we're so afraid of our own creation that we shun our own humanity alongside it. Hate begets hate, and for what? And the great thing about The Creator is that it explores what it means to hate, how that behavior is not innate, it's learned. Are we creating an environment that is hospitable towards the other, or are we villainizing them, backing them into a corner and forging them into a villain entirely within our own mind? We see this shown beautifully in the relationship between Joshua and Alfie. Joshua spends time with a simulant, Alfie, after years of knowing them as not real and the enemy, and it's entirely in engaging with just one simulant, one person who represents a completely different worldview than his own, that he's finally able to see the nuance in the world. He's able to see the good in these beings, the fact that they are just like him, they just exist. They're more than just programming. AI is not a monolith, just like cultures and people are not a monolith. I love how the film reflects that and how certain countries have embraced otherness and others are still clinging onto antiquated ideologies. And yeah, I've seen a lot of criticism about how this film homogenizes a certain region of the world, but I think that's reading the overall message in bad faith. You see, New Asia in the movie is representative of the world's larger issue with AI. It just happens to be using a region of the world to exemplify a larger conflict going on. And one of the beautiful things about The Creator is that its world building feels natural. There's not an abundance of exposition, there's no over-explaining things. It simply drops you into the world and allows you to experience it from region to region, country to country, talking to different people from different backgrounds, and you're able to sort of piece together everything in your mind. You're not grouping certain demographics of people together and homogenizing them. It's more of just like if you were to visit this region of the world, Southeast Asia, Thailand, all the countries that Gareth Edwards has said that they shot. Also, if you really want to get down to it, the fact that New Asia is vaguely defined as an Asian superstate, I get the initial frustration to want to criticize the film for grouping people together because of that, but I mean, if you look at the West, it's basically categorized as the same thing. It's not really, oh, there's this clearly defined country or this clearly defined country. I mean, maybe the United States because they're the bad guys, but it's more or less the same thing. And I think it's because Gareth Edwards isn't playing in specifics here. He's talking about a broader issue, a broader concept, and using these larger ideas, a larger background conflict to talk about a very intimate human experience. I love how the creator explores this dichotomy in the East versus West backdrop. The East is inclusive, has learned how to embrace AI and adapt their world. It's just small changes they've made to accommodate this, and the naturalism of how the AI and human villagers just exist goes a long way in driving that home. Whereas the West is convinced it's a threat and seeks to eradicate mankind just like the Homo sapiens did to the Neanderthals. If they don't get ahead of this, then humanity will surely become extinct. They're so preoccupied with everyone else in this imaginary threat that they've almost neglected the domestic problems that are slowly eating away at the core of their institution. And I mean, if that isn't an allegory for the war on terror, then I really don't know what else is. I mean, look at LA in this film. It's a hazy, broken down shell of what it once was. Now, obviously, I think a lot of people would read a bit too much into that. I think LA just happens to be the cyberpunk hub because of Blade Runner and a bunch of other things. I don't think Gareth Edwards and the filmmakers are trying to make a commentary on the state of LA in order to endorse some right-wing viewpoints, but I digress. The radiation from the bomb has nearly reached pre-bombing levels, and yet it's been left derelict, a pollution-laden wasteland. People aren't living, they're just on a cycle, like robots going through the motions of their day-to-day lives, going to work at a shit cleanup job that they don't even want and isn't even working effectively, but we're so hell-bent on keeping because the AI wants to take our jobs. Yeah, we've heard that one before. There's no life, no green, no stunning vistas and happy people. The contrast between these two parts of the world couldn't be any more different. It shows a place that has traditionally respected the symbiotic relationship between man and nature, man and technology, incorporated it into their daily lives, or has had to roll with the punches due to imperialist threats and changes, thriving. The US has never experienced that, has never granted that level of acceptance. Its primary concern is capitalism and industry. It wants to keep things as they are, to adhere to the idyllic American lifestyle. The AI is just a means to uphold that. They serve the machine and nothing more. The problem is, you can't treat sentience as a tool. If it has sentience, then it will have the capacity to question the nature of its purpose and reality. This story is more universal than just what does it mean to be human? It's about what it means to be alive, to have sentience and consciousness, to exist, and the beauty of having life. There's a really interesting spiritual bent going on here as well, where Alfie is a Christ-like messianic figure. Simulants see this deity that is going to liberate AI so that they may live in peace and harmony with mankind. There's also the idea of Alfie's very conception being born with the sole intent of destroying Nomad and liberating AI. She was created and has a purpose, but only in sacrifice. This spiritual angle speaks to the fact that these simulants aren't just a matter of binary code. They now exist as humans do, creating their own belief systems akin to that of humanity's. There's this beautiful moment when Alfie defies her directive of just vanquishing the Western imperialists, meeting and having a moment of connection and liberation with this sentient suicide bomber AI, whose sole directive is to run out into the thick of battle and blow itself up. The first bomber hesitates. There's a sliver of personality, of humanity, of consciousness, even in something as utilitarian as this bomber robot, and Howl just ignores it, tells it to push through. It then eventually falls on the shoulders of her right-hand man to just go out there as the AIs did and get the job done. It doesn't really matter if it's AI or a human. The point is that the system and people in charge will only see you as one thing and direct you in that way because it's the only use it has for you. The establishment's loss of power is what frightens them. The LA nuke is just a boogeyman, an excuse for the government and military to impose their will on other people and another region of the world. If we create something, we must nurture it and guide it, not exploit it, leave it out to dry, cast it aside when it fails, and scapegoat it for our own problems. The creator exposes our treatment of the other as a means to pass the blame, neglecting the role we play, our responsibility in the world we've created. I'm always fascinated with Gareth Edwards' protagonists, passive characters who've just sort of accepted the world of the film for what it is and have found a way to live within it, but come to realize their actions can be the very thing that makes a difference. You feel every casualty throughout the film, the loss of innocence and the violence of our own making. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be alive? And can love transcend bones and boundaries? Joshua's sacrifice in the end makes it so Alfie can go live her life free as her own person without the fear of being targeted by Nomad. It takes the traditional Messiah story and says, wait, hold on a second. What if you had a say in the matter? Joshua winds up sacrificing himself to save his surrogate daughter, the most selfless human parental act one can perform, because through her, he was able to rediscover his humanity and love for Maya. Alfie is able to live in a world knowing her parents' love for her is what led to the liberation of their kind. With Maya being Nirmada's daughter, Joshua is forced to confront his emotions and mission. He spent all this time hating AI, searching for Nirmada in order to kill it, when it was right in front of him, the very person he loved. If he was capable of loving Maya, then she isn't some sort of pure evil. There's an awakening, a time when you're confronted with the reality of the biases you've carried with you for all of those years. We've seen this through the evolution of Joshua's best friend as well. He changed by living in the East, falling in love with a simulant, and just completely reshaping his worldview by exposure. The journey Joshua goes on with Alfie of coming to understand her as a living thing makes him able to understand himself and confront those biases. Joshua thought he was doing a job, tricking Maya into loving him in order to get something in return. To get to Nirmada, he was manufacturing a love, creating something artificial. But what started out as a seemingly artificial thing soon became a very real thing. Their love for one another is what led to the creation of Alfie. And if AI are our creation, they also possess our capacity for love. Going by what the creator posits, artificial intelligence only becomes artificial when it's devoid of love, when there's a lack of empathy in it. Gareth Edwards absolutely excels at pulling back the layers of a cynical world in order to reveal the little slices of humanity existing beneath the surface. Maybe in coming to appreciate and understand what really matters, we'll be able to grow, respect, and love others that are different from us and help change things. Underneath it all, we're the same. We're all connected. Alfie is Maya and Alfie is Joshua. Our children are supposed to be the best of each parent and the culmination of our love for one another as it merges into one being. Joshua was someone waiting around to die with nothing to live for. With Alfie, he found his reason to care and live. Alfie, in turn, allowed for Maya and Joshua to be together at the end, to rekindle their relationship, knowing that the future was secured in Alfie, that the AI and people alike will endure. They made things right. The Creator is a movie about the very things that make us alive, and the things that connect all of us, whether we're an AI, human, or any other life form. The Creator really holds a mirror up to how we treat each other, how we treat those different from us, and how it results in an external factor imposing their will onto a group of people. It challenges our beliefs and biases. It's about how the creation can teach the Creator more about themselves and the thing they've perhaps refused to come to terms with. It opens up their mind. Love for the people you care about informs your love and empathy for others. For as much as we sometimes appear reluctant to admit it, we all have more in common than we realize, and embracing that connection is how we advance, evolve, and shape a better world for our kids. If those kids learn through our actions and our examples, it should be through love and acceptance, not bigotry and violence. The Creator is really the culmination of Gareth Edwards' thematic pursuit of parental and child relationships, and the sacrifices parents make so that their children can live in a better future, and also the examples our parents set that inform who we are. He's fascinated with that symbiotic relationship and how we become more enlightened, empathetic people in the process of it. We really owe it to that child, to that creation, not to corrupt it with the worst of humanity. I think that's how he sees children having a positive impact on parents. It allows them to rediscover the love and humanity that they may have become truly jaded to over the years. We can all get there, and it's beautiful when we do. It's everything truly in its right place.